How you doing, guys? Well, I'm finally ready to talk to you a little bit. I've been struggling with all this, learning all this technology and doing all this stuff for my lower level classes, and holy cow. Anyway, um, I thought I would talk a little bit about try to pick up kind of where we left off and finish up that little part we were doing before all this shit went down. But we were in Bell and Ashwood, and we were talking about population, and a lot of it involved different kinds of critiques of Malthusian thought, right, on population. And so we did the inequality argument. And today, what I wanted to do is talk about the part where they're dealing with what they call the technological critique of Malthus. Okay. And I think I want to start with a quote that we read a while back when we were doing Foster. And Foster was talking about the environment at the time of the Industrial Revolution. Remember that chapter? And he has a quote in there from Karl Marx, where Marx is talking about the intensification of agriculture, how because of industrialization and because everybody is moving toward the cities, that it means that the agricultural population first of all diminishes, and then also the non if I could talk about it this way, the non-food producing population increases, and so there's a much greater demand, right, on the agricultural sector to support the industrial sector. So at least that's the way I see it. So here's what Karl Marx said, and maybe you'll remember this quote. So Karl Marx said, "All progress in capitalist agriculture is a progress in the art not only of robbing the worker, but of robbing the soil. All progress in increasing the fertility of the soil for a given time is progress towards ruining the long-lasting sources of that fertility. The more a country proceeds from large-scale industry as the background of its development, as in the case of the United States, the more rapid is this process of destruction. Capitalist production, therefore, only develops the techniques and degree of here we go. Capitalist production, therefore, only develops the techniques and the degree of combination of the social process of production by simultaneously undermining the original sources of all wealth, the soil and the worker." Okay, so two things in that quote that are important, right? All progress in capitalist agriculture is progress in the art of robbing the soil, right? All progress in increasing the fertility of the soil for a given time is progress toward ruining the long-lasting sources of that fertility. And then he says, capitalist production, therefore, only develops the techniques and the degree of combination of the social process of production by simultaneously undermining the original sources of all wealth, the soil and the worker. So I wanted us to hang on to that quote for a little bit, and maybe we'll come back to it. Maybe we'll just touch it, right? Touch on it a little bit later on. So, like I said, we are going ahead here, and we're going to talk about the technological critique of Malthus's theory. Okay, and so. Here we go. All right. We have a few people that we're going to talk about, right? Or a few people that Bell and Ashwood talk about in terms of this technological critique of Malthus. There's a guy named Julian Stewart, and Julian Stewart argued that the solution to resource scarcity is actually to increase the population. The answer to resource scarcity is to actually increase population. Because what Simon was saying was that ultimately people are the most important resource, right? People are the ultimate resource. So that means that when you have a large number of people, you also have a very large pool of talent, right? And you have a very large pool of brain power, and you have a very large pool of labor, and that actually then that all that human power, right, could be applied to working out different kinds of technological solutions to scarcity. When confronted with scarcity, we apply our intellect and we find new sources of resources, new techniques for extracting them, and in some cases, alternatives for resources that have become scarce, right? So through technology, we find these alternative ways of doing things, these alternative ways of making things, alternative resources. And Simon calls that the principle of substitutability, right? The principle of substitutability. So I'll give you a little bit of an illustration of the principle of substitutability. If we can think of how we are substituting electric cars, right, for uh, fossil fuel driven cars, okay, that we're substituting one source of energy for another, one that is supposedly more sustainable. Everybody understand that? Okay. And hopefully, anyway. And that's what Simon calls that the principle of substitutability. So as we come up against the wall, right, of these resources, we'll come up, because we're so smart and talented and everything, we'll come up with a new kind of technology to help us deal with that. Okay, and for him, that's going to depend on people. So you want people. You want large numbers of people. You want big populations, because the bigger the population, the larger the pool of brain power, and the larger the pool of labor, and so on. Okay. All right. Now, what about that? Right? What about that? Well, I think his claim is a little bit hard to take at face value, and we'll have some reasons for that. We'll try to illustrate that with a very important example, right, that Bell and Ashwood use. But we have to understand, right, that there's more to innovation. There's more to innovation, technological innovation, right, than sheer size of population, right? Social circumstances also have a determining influence on the ability of society to become innovative, right? Social circumstances also determine our ability to be innovative. So, so for example, the education system. What kind of education system do we have? We also know that democratic societies, for example, allow and encourage creative thinking. That the allowance and the encouragement of creative thinking would also be a social circumstance, right? That would influence our ability to be innovative. And so maybe it's misguided to just always think about technology as coming to the rescue, right? Technology isn't always going to come to the rescue, and technology can't always come to the rescue. And in fact, very often when we try to solve one problem, right, through technology, we create a new one. So maybe we should look, toward social reorganization, right, rather than simply always looking to technology as the thing that's going to save us. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna stop right there as our introduction. The next thing we're gonna go into, we're gonna continue this, and we're gonna talk about a woman named Esther Bosterup, and what she said about population growth and technology.